4 months into my pregnancy, I secretly took an abortifacient. I told no one, and each day I would strap a pillow to my belly, pretending the child was still there, all because in my past life, my widowed sister-in-law and I gave birth on the same day. She delivered a healthy baby boy, while in my swaddling clothes lay a piglet. My husband flew into a rage. He dashed the piglet to its death and declared to everyone that I had committed adultery with a pig demon. He then had me tied to a stake and burned alive. As the flames licked at my skin, I saw my husband holding my sister-in-law, a blissful smile on his face. My sister-in-law just lost her husband and then gave birth to a stillborn child. The villagers will definitely consider her a jinx. I had no choice but to swap your child with mine. My sister-in-law is wiping away her tears in sorrow. I will choose a feng shui blessed spot to bury my sister-in-law with piglets, so she won't be lonely. I died with hatred in the fire. Reborn. I want to see if, without me, their family can still live so carefree. I had just stepped out of the clinic when I ran straight into Chu Yunji and Lin Wenwu, who were shopping on the street, with a pillow tied around my waist and the faint scent of blood masked by the smell of herbs. Neither of them noticed that the child was already gone. Lin Wenwu, supporting Chu Yunji, scolded me. How could you go out when you're only 3 months along? Aren't you afraid of harming the baby? Had I heard those words before, I would have thought Lin Wenwu was simply worried about me, but hearing them now, it's clear he's afraid that if I lose this child, there will be no one to exchange for the piglet in Chu Yunji's belly. I concealed the disgust in my eyes and spoke in a feigned, fragile tone. I wasn't feeling well, so I went to buy some medicine to stabilize the pregnancy. I didn't expect to run into sister-in-law and Wenwu. From a distance, I almost mistook you for a married couple. Lin Wenwu held Chu Yunji's hand protectively in front of her, while she clung tightly to his waist. Combined with their previous intimate gestures, they looked every bit the married couple. Chu Yunji panicked slightly and let go of Lin Wenwu's hand. My stomach is a bit upset. That's why I asked Wenwu to support me. Lin Wenwu, meanwhile, looked at me with disgust and snapped. My relationship with my sister-in-law is completely innocent. It's your dirty mind that sees everything as dirty. Moreover, since my elder brother went to the battlefield and has been out of contact, it's natural for me, as his younger brother, to take good care of my sister-in-law. Qingqing, you come from a merchant background and are physically strong, so you naturally wouldn't understand the pain of pregnancy. If I didn't know the truth, I might have been fooled by Lin Wenwu's words and felt so ashamed that I would kneel and apologize in front of Chu Yunji's room. After being reborn, I realized how foolish I was to actually believe the lies of Lin Wenwu and Chu Yunji. All talk about respecting my elder brother and taking care of my sister-in-law, but in reality, they had already ended up in the same bed. In my previous life, I sympathized with Chu Yunji for losing her husband at a young age, and not only did I not feel jealous of my husband's partiality towards her, but I also sent precious medicinal herbs to her room like a flowing stream, even on the same day as Chu Yunji's childbirth. I was so worried she might feel wrong that I arranged several midwives for her unexpectedly. After enduring a day and night of torment, Lin Wenwu took one look at the child and wanted to drag me to the woodshed to be burned alive. He accused me of being unable to bear the loneliness and committing adultery with a pig demon, giving him a cuckold shame. My hands trembled as I took the child from Lin Wenwu. The infant had pinkish-white skin, a snout like a pig's, and a tiny tail. It was the very image of a piglet. I pleaded and explained with all my might, but not a single soul believed me. In front of all the servants, he stripped me naked, tied me to a post, and burned me alive. My enormous dowry was then carved up and plundered by that whole wretched lot. My mother, refusing to believe their lies, came to uncover the truth, but their actions drove her to such fury that she suffered a stroke. The families nearby who had suffered from the pig demon's rampage hated me to the very marrow of their bones. They scattered my ashes in the latrine, cursing me to be trapped in eternal torment, never to find peace in the afterlife. Even after learning the truth, my own flesh and blood refused to acknowledge me. Instead, he admired Lin Wenwu's cunning and wanted nothing to do with a merchant's daughter like me as his mother. The mere thought of my miserable end in my past life, while they climbed to wealth and happiness over my corpse, sent a tidal wave of fury churning in my chest. I said, with biting sarcasm, "Oh, really, Wenwu has never been this considerate with me, too. I accidentally fell into the water the other day. Once Wenwu saw the child was safe, he never set foot in my room again. It's clear that in his heart, you, his sister-in-law, are far more important than I am." Lin Wenwu gave an awkward cough. Yunji's health is not good, and she's carrying my eldest brother's only child. Of course, I need to take extra care of her. As for you, if you're not feeling well, go back and rest. I walked toward the carriage, just lifting the curtain, when I heard Lin Wenwu add something. By the way, Yoonji hasn't been well lately, the doctor said she needs to eat blood, make sure to have someone send it over. This is the key point. Bird's Nest is a tonic reserved for the imperial family. Even as the wealthiest family in Yangzhou, we only possess a few ounces. How could someone like Chu Yoonji be worthy of such a treasure? With a sweet smile, I agreed on the surface, but once inside the carriage, I ordered my maid to feed all the Bird's Nest to my wolfhound. Even a dog shows genuine loyalty to its master. Chu Yoonji only deserves to drink boiled tree bark. Upon returning to the estate, I had my personal maid take the inventory list and account for what remained of my dowry. I was arranged to marry Lin Wenwu by a matchmaker. When he visited, he was polite and treated me with great respect. Moreover, I heard that the Lin family values loyalty and righteousness, even taking good care of their widowed sister-in-law. I thought such a family would surely treat their daughter-in-law well. That's why I brought a full boatload of dowry and married a once prosperous scholar who had fallen on hard times. He said there was no one to take care of his family, so I took out all my dowry and let the Lin family squander it. When my mother-in-law fell seriously ill, I personally took care of her for months and even cut off a piece of my flesh to use as a medicinal ingredient. Even though he was not one to curry favor with the high and mighty, I still used my own gold and silver to grease the wheels at every level, smoothing his path to officialdom. I truly believed I had never failed the Lin family, yet I never imagined I would meet such a wretched end. My reputation ruined and my very bones ground to dust. After my mother-in-law found out I had reclaimed my dowry, she came to my room several times to make a scene. I managed to fob her off with the excuse that I had lent the money out. As for Lin Wenwu, I told him the pregnancy was unstable and that he should sleep in a separate room. Lin Wenwu's thoughts had long since drifted to Chu Yun's side, longing to be with her every day, so he naturally agreed. Pretending to look wronged, he said he was going to rest in the study, but before leaving, he reminded the maid to take good care of my belly. As soon as he stepped out of my room, he turned around and went to Chu Yun's side. Lin Wenwu was certain that I loved him deeply, that he had me completely under his control, and that he would certainly take good care of the child. Therefore, he often paid attention to me. In the following time, I pretended to know nothing, watching him shower Chu Yun with attention while I peacefully nursed my pregnancy. His official duties kept him busy, but whenever Lin Wenwu had a spare moment, he would inevitably take Chu Yunji out for excursions. If Chu Yunji so much as uttered the word like, Lin Wenwu would buy it for her without a second thought, even if it was a jade bracelet worth a fortune. To the uninformed passers-by on the street, Lin Wenwu appeared to be Chu Yunji's husband, and everyone praised his attentiveness. If I hadn't known from my past life that Chu Yunji's child was a piglet, I would have thought the child was Lin Wenwu's. Once, I happened upon the two of them being intimate on the street. Finding the sight distasteful, I turned to leave but was struck by a carriage and thrown several meters. As I lay aching on the ground, Lin Wenwu rushed toward me in alarm, only to be diverted by Chu Yunji's piercing scream. A flying stone had grazed Chu Yunji's hand, leaving a bloody gash. Lin Wenwu, his face etched with worry, clutched the injured hand before sweeping Chu Yunji up into his arms. He then turned to the servants trailing behind him, "Fetch the physicians, now." 3. With that, he turned and left, abandoning me to lie on the ground for what felt like an eternity. It wasn't until dusk had fully settled that I managed to struggle to my feet and make my way home. As soon as I arrived home, I saw Lin Wenwu personally feeding the medicine to Chu Yunji, who was lying in bed. He sighed in relief upon seeing me and confirming the child was still safe, then scolded me for going out, blaming me for causing Chu Yunji to get hurt because of me. A familiar official's wife subtly warned me to be careful during her visit. I smiled and thanked her for her kindness, pretending to be deeply devoted and convinced that there was no improper relationship between the two, and that Lin Wenwu was simply kind-hearted. Even when the lengthy bill was delivered to the Lin household, it was accepted without question. With the promise to settle it all after the birth, the official's wife was furious upon seeing the staggering amount, muttering as she left, vowing to have her cousin, a minor official in the frontier, bring back this Lin family's eldest son to teach the two of them a lesson. I naturally knew about the two of them, but I was more than happy to see Lin Wenwu pour all his passion into Chu Yun. If it weren't for Chu Yun diverting attention away from me, how could the child in my belly have remained undiscovered for so long? If he had ever touched my stomach or accompanied me to see a doctor just once, he would have realized the child was long gone. My appearance of being on the verge of giving birth is merely a fabrication using 2 pillows. Chu Yunji has been experiencing frequent contractions lately, which has her terribly anxious. She sent people over to check on my movements again and again. Lin Wenwu is also on edge, practically spending every night in Chu Yunji's room. Seeing that the time was about right, I finished my makeup in the mirror, picked up the tonic, and with a slight smile curling my lips, said to the maid behind me, "Let's go. We should go see how sister-in-law is doing. Remember to bring more familiar people over. With this bowl of tonic, we might just have a new addition to the family." Chu Yan's meeting with Lin Wenwu sent all the maids away, which worked out in my favor. I pushed the door open, but froze in place after a quick glance. The tonic in my hand spilled, making a loud noise as it hit the ground. The ladies following behind rushed in to help me, but they froze instantly upon seeing the two people on the bed. Chu Yunji was lying in Lin Wenwu's arms, wearing only thin undergarments, while Lin Wenwu's hand was caressing her chest. Seeing someone approach, Lin Wenwu hastily got out of bed and grabbed a blanket to cover Chu Yunji completely. I was so shocked that I fell to the ground, and the maid scrambled to help me up. Mrs. Li looked at me, my face streaked with tears, and then at Chu Yunji behind Lin Wenwu. "Lin Jiar, how could you do such a thing with your sister-in-law? You've got it wrong. I've been feeling unwell lately, which is why I asked Wenwu to give me a massage." Chu Yunji hastily explained. "Ching, didn't Wenwu ask me to come over? Hurry up and explain." I forced down the bitterness in my heart. It was my instruction to Wenwu. With no one to look after my sister-in-law, I asked Wenwu to stay in her room every day. These words were like a stone thrown into water, sending ripples through the crowd. People covered their mouths, casting scornful looks at Lin Wenwu and Chu Yunji. I bet that child is the second son of the Lin families. Why else would she neglect her own flesh and blood to go care for someone else? Chu Yunji's eyes welled up with tears, and Lin Wenwu pointed at me and scolded. "Lu Qingqing, pretending to be virtuous to get me to Yunji's side, and then deliberately bringing people over. What exactly are you plotting for? Yunji is already so pitiful, and you know she's about to give birth, yet you still want to ruin her reputation. Are you trying to cause a mother and child to die?" Chu Yunji also came to his senses, got off the bed, and struggled to run towards the wall to crash into it. "Qingqing, I know you hate me. I'll take the child and die, never to be an eyesore in front of you. I will die to prove that I am innocent and pure with Wenwu." Another group of people rushed to stop Chu Yunji. Seeing Chu Yan's intense reaction and Lin Wenwu's upright demeanor, people began to hesitate. Could it really be Lu Qingqing's scheme? Merchants indeed love to scheme. This is driving someone to their death. How vicious is Lu Qingqing's mind? The accusations kept pouring down on me. And suddenly, Chu Yan clutched her stomach. Groaning in pain, already in labor, Lin Wenwu scooped Chu Yunji up and placed her on the bed. I called for the midwife to help, but Lin Wenwu stared at my belly and slapped me across the face. My belly hit the corner of the table, and I was drenched in cold sweat from the pain. Clutching my stomach tightly, Lin Wenwu quickly wrote out a divorce paper and threw it in my face. "What madness possessed me to bring a vicious woman like you into this house? If anything happens to Yunji or the child today, you can consider yourself banished from this family for good." My mother-in-law had rushed in at some point and began beating and kicking me, every blow landing squarely on my stomach. My eldest son finally managed to have a child. If anything happens to it, this old woman has nothing left to live for. By the time everyone managed to pull her off me, the water pouch I had tied to myself had burst. I lay on the ground, feigning a state of near death. A flicker of joy flashed in Lin Wenwu's eyes as he helped me to the side chamber. He had been holding back for the baby's sake, but now that Chu Yunji's delivery was imminent, he had no choice but to induce my labor first. If the baby truly couldn't be delivered, the only option left would be a cesarean section to save the child. I moaned incessantly from the pain and grasped Lin Wenwu's hand. "Wenwu, go fetch the midwife for me, now." Lin Wenwu hastily pointed out a midwife and said to me in a rush, "Qingqing, Yunji is giving birth for the first time. I must go and keep an eye on her. You listen to the midwife and bring this child into the world, no matter what." I silently cursed at his retreating back. The empty room was left to just the two of us. I tossed her 10 taels of silver, and she left with joy, not forgetting to inform me before she went that Lin Wenwu was planning to kill the mother to take the child. I still underestimated Lin Wenwu's ruthlessness. I gritted my teeth, stuffed a pillow into the swaddling cloth, pretended to be exhausted, and lay down in bed, waiting for the show to begin. About half an hour later, Lin Wenwu crept up to my bedside and quickly swapped the babies. As soon as he placed the piglet on the bed, he saw me slowly waking up. "Wenwu, why are you here?" Lin Wenwu froze for a moment, then forced a smile. "Yunji has finished giving birth, so I came to see our child." The child seemed to sense something was wrong. Letting out a low, animal-like whimper, Lin Wenwu lifted the swaddling cloth, and with just one glance, his face twisted in fury. "What in the world is this? Lu Qingqing, you actually consorted with a pig demon and gave birth to a piglet." Chapter 2:5. The violent quarrel drew a crowd. My mother-in-law pushed through the crowd, saw the child's pig's tail and pale skin, and began screaming and pointing her finger in my face. Well, Lu Qingqing, how dare you commit such a heinous act? My son passed the imperial examination at just 25, he's prime minister material, worthy of marrying a princess herself. I only agreed to your marriage because your family had a decent reputation, yet you consorted with a pig demon and gave birth to this half-human, half-swine abomination. How can the Lin family ever show our face in public again? How can I face our ancestors in the afterlife? The mother-in-law threw a fit, one moment threatening to dash her own brains out, the next vowing to have me burned alive. The ladies and young misses hurried over to restrain the old woman, then turned to heap accusations upon me. Chu Yunji, having just given birth, also emerged holding her child. The plan was proceeding so smoothly that they let their guard down completely, failing to notice anything amiss with the baby. As her gaze swept over the child on the floor, a flicker of malice passed through her eyes. Qingqing, how could you possibly have given birth to a pig demon? There must be some misunderstanding here, although you often go to the pigsty and even wrote some letters to the pigs. Everyone knows that the pig demon eats people, so you shouldn't be colluding with him to harm others. This statement really set the crowd ablaze. Many in this crowd have had their homes attacked by the pig demon, or even lost family members to it. Upon hearing this, they all started yelling at me. I wondered why that pig demon kept targeting people in our area. So his mistress is here too. No wonder she's been feeding him information behind the scenes. You murderer. Ah, no wonder the Lin family has been trying to kill the pig demon for a year without success. It's all because of you, you troublemaker. Someone must have found the letters in the drawer, read them one by one, and got so angry they spat at me. Ugh, you'd flirt with a pig demon. Better strip you naked and sell you to a brothel. How could you abandon a fine scholar like Lin and go mess around with a pig demon? Heartless and cruel. This kind of woman deserves to be burned alive. She has done such a heartless thing. Kill her and see if she dares to harm anyone in the future. Letters were thrown at my face, cutting my cheeks. They grabbed ornaments from the table and threw them at me. Some even got so worked up that they found a stone and bashed it against my head. Seeing my sorry state, bloodied and battered, Chu Yunji hid behind Lin Wenwu, snickering. Lin Wenwu, for his part, yanked me right off the bed with an air of righteous indignation. Qingqing, it's not that I'm unwilling to spare you, but a life must be paid for a life. Since you aided the pig demon in harming others, you shall be burned alive to atone for your crimes. Hearing Lin Wenwu's words, far from panicking, I actually laughed. What evidence do you have that I'm colluding with the pig demon? Lin Wenwu pointed at the child on the ground. The child you gave birth to is the evidence. I stared intently at Lin Wenwu, making him feel uneasy. Everything was ready, so why did she have this nagging feeling that something was wrong? Why is that child so quiet? Lin Wenwu turned his stiff neck to look at the swaddled baby in Chu Yunji's arms. Before he could move, he heard me speak. The child has already been aborted. How could it possibly be born again? 6. As if struck by lightning, Lin Wenwu froze on the spot. Chu Yunji also sensed something was wrong and moved to lift the swaddling cloth. Lin Wenwu tried to stop her, but he was too late. The swaddling clothes had already been opened. Inside, there was no baby, only a pillow lay there. How can there be no child in here? The mother-in-law pointed at the bundle, stammering as she asked, you all tried to use a child to trap me, but I found out. I went to the clinic and ended the pregnancy months ago. Lin Wenwu, I should actually thank you. If you hadn't been so completely obsessed with Chu Yunji, showing me not a shred of concern, I could never have pulled the wool over your eyes so easily. It suddenly dawned on Lin Wenwu, the last time he saw me, no wonder my complexion had seemed unnaturally pale. It was because of the baby. He staggered backward a few steps, muttering under his breath, impossible. Then this child is. Someone pointed at the piglet that still had a faint breath. Naturally, it belongs to Chu Yunji. She had an affair with a pig demon, and I, the good husband, came up with the idea of swapping my child with hers to save his mistress. Seeing that I had revealed everything, Chu Yunji threw a pillow out as if she had gone mad, pointing at the child on the ground. This child isn't mine. You framed me and hid my child. You're the one who gave birth to the pig demon, and my mother-in-law can testify. Chu Yunji pulled over the mother-in-law, who clung to her like a lifeline and nodded along with Chu Yunji's words. My daughter-in-law was never proper to begin with. She can't compare to Yunji. It's her spreading lies, and you've all been deceived by her. Both sides are sticking to their stories, leaving the onlookers confused and unsure who is right and who is wrong. Someone said through clenched teeth, after all, it's the sin of your Lin family daughter-in-law. You must provide someone to pay for our lives. I was startled, ready to defend myself, but Lin Wenwu and my mother-in-law pushed me into the crowd. It's her. It's definitely her. Kill her. and then leave us alone, my hand pressed against my lower garment. I was just about to show them I bore no signs of having given birth when a man's voice rang out. It's not her, the eldest son of the Lin family pushed aside the curtain. He was unshaven and looked utterly travel-worn. How did Chu Yunji give birth to a child without us ever having been intimate? Like a thunderbolt striking everyone's ears, all eyes turned to Chu Yunji. Chu Yunji stepped back repeatedly, mumbling incessantly, "No, it's not. I've been stationed at the border for 3 or 4 years now, and I've never once returned home. Every soldier stationed here can vouch for that." Lin Wenwu and the others had always told people that the eldest son of the Lin family had secretly returned home a few times at night, which was how he had managed to father a child. Now, with the man himself publicly contradicting their story, their faces fell with palpable embarrassment. When Chu Yunji went into labor, many midwives were present to assist. Although they didn't handle the child directly, the commotion and sounds of childbirth were unmistakable. It was a genuine birth right on cue. The physician arrived as promised. "I can testify that this young lady indeed came to have an abortion a few months ago, and since the madam has also given birth, it's worth checking if there's any sign of childbirth in this room." 7. The room is so clean, there isn't even a trace of blood, let alone any smell of it. I picked up the letter from the ground. Lin Wenwu and Chu Yunji were clever enough to sneak these letters onto me when I wasn't paying attention, but they didn't realize I hadn't produced anything, so I took the opportunity to put them back in the drawer when they left. This is Chu Yunji's courtyard, and these letters naturally belong to him. If you want to hold a grudge, don't blame the wrong person. With my subtle hint, everyone realized how terribly wrong they had been before. Vicious eyes glared at Lin Wenwu and Chu Yunji, as if they wanted to tear the two apart immediately. "Nonsense, how dare you frame Yunji?" Lin Wenwu quickly approached me, grabbed my sleeve, and spoke in a hushed voice. "I know you resent how well I treat Yunji. If you take the fall for her this time, I promise my heart will belong only to you from now on." He seemed utterly heartbroken. "I will never see Yunji again." Oh my, how deeply affectionate. I can't help but laugh at Lin Wenwu's words. They would have held some appeal to my past self, but this life I wish Lin Wenwu would stay as far away from me as possible. I raised my voice. "Wenwu, since you knew that Chu Yun was colluding with the pig demon to kill people, you should have told them earlier. How could you just stand by and watch them die?" Lin Wenwu was caught off guard by my words and immediately tried to cover my mouth, but I dodged nimbly. The crowd closed in on Lin Wenwu step by step. He wanted to run, but how could he escape? He and Chu Yun were surrounded and beaten. "Ching Ching, Ching Ching, save me, Lu Ching Ching, you will die a horrible death." Lin Wenwu went from pleading to cursing, his voice growing hoarse. A bitter feeling filled my heart. I too once loved Lin Wenwu. That first glance through the curtain was all it took for me to fall for him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought several ships of dowry to marry him. Even rejecting a noble prince's proposal, I tried my best to be a good wife to him, cooking and weaving without rest, believing that one day he would come to love me. But reality proved that Lin Wenwu's heart was unyielding. To him, I was just a handy tool, coaxed with a few words when needed, and put away when not. My mother-in-law was weeping uncontrollably, kneeling on the ground and begging me. This was all that little tramp Chu Yunji's idea. "It has nothing to do with my son. He's still young. He could still become a high official in the future. Please, I beg you, make those people stop." If this were someone easily embarrassed, seeing an elder plead like this, they would likely be at a complete loss. But I am a person who has already died once. No amount of face or propriety is more important to me than my own peace of mind. I slapped him across the face without hesitation. "Just hit him and not you. Huh, feeling good now? Weren't you happy just now when you were cursing at me?" After a few more slaps, my mother-in-law's face was swollen like a pig's head. I stopped only when my arm was sore from slapping. The mother-in-law fell to the ground, covering her cheek and speaking incoherently. "You, how dare you hit me? I'll have my son divorce you." I mimicked her and spat at the mother-in-law. "Pfft, it's not your son divorcing me, it's me divorcing your son." Only after I finished did I remember that Lin's eldest son was also there. I had thought he would stop me, but instead, he just stared at my mother-in-law without saying a word. Not stopping me was just fine. I took a comb from the dressing table, tidied up my hair, and then turned to leave. The Lin family was already in complete disarray, taking advantage of the fact that my mother-in-law and others were focused on Lin Wenwu and the others. I quickly gathered the maids and packed up the household items to take away anything that was mine, even a teacup, I wouldn't leave behind for them. Looking at the completely emptied Lin residence, I felt utterly satisfied. I had contacted my parents days ago. I was just waiting for them to arrive so I could leave this wretched place, taking my dowry with me. 8. By the time my mother-in-law came to her senses, the house was stripped bare. with nothing left but the pillars holding up the roof beams. Furious, she threw herself on the floor, wailing and screaming, calling me an ill-bred woman. The people around her weren't going to put up with her, spitting in her face, scheming to get that girl to die in your place, and now that you've been exposed, you're shouting and screaming, that Lou girl is still too kind. If it were me, I'd skin every last one of them before I'd be satisfied. Already furious, the mother-in-law was now overwhelmed with anger, and she fainted, her eyes rolling back. The official's wife was delighted to hear about my divorce and came to the inn to see me. She vividly recounted the news about Lin Wenwu and Chu Yun. Chu Yun was indeed the sister-in-law of Lin's eldest son, that's correct, but after the eldest son left, the mother-in-law had the idea of having Chu Yun take care of both households. Her thinking was simple. Weren't the children of Linda and Lin Er all part of the Lin family? Even if Linda returned later, seeing the children with him, he wouldn't say anything. Chu Yunji and Lin Wenwu took a liking to each other during their time together. Despite the eldest son of the Lin family sending money home every year, they still insisted he was missing. They were dead set on being together. But then, I came along. Seeing that I had value to him, Lin Wenwu put Chu Yunji on the back burner and focused solely on preparing to marry me. Chu Yunji, unable to bear the loneliness of her boudoir, spent her nights carousing outside, consorting with dissolute men. On one occasion, she met a young man, finding him handsome and dashing, and his physique beyond reproach, he gave her immense satisfaction. She promptly fell head over heels in love with him. The man often inquired about hunting the boar demon, and Chu Yunji held nothing back. Whenever the Lin family organized a hunt, the man would hide in Chu Yunji's boudoir, where they would indulge in passionate lovemaking. Although Chu Yunji felt something was amiss, physical pleasure took precedence, so she didn't dwell on it. It wasn't until the boar demon, drunk one night, revealed its true form that Chu Yunji realized her grave mistake and hastily drove the creature away. By then, she was already carrying the boar demon's child. After hearing her tearful account, Lin Wenwu became convinced that marrying me was the cause of Chu Yunji's misfortune. He then conceived the idea of having me take the blame in her stead. At this point, the official's wife wore a look of disdain. I really don't know what's wrong with his head. While everyone was cursing Chu Yunji, he actually pleaded for mercy on his behalf. He said she was also deceived, and wanted you to go door to door kowtowing for Chu Yunji, begging them to let him go. I continued eating the dried fruit without changing my expression. Did they agree? No. Chu Yunji committed a grave crime and naturally couldn't be spared, so he was burned to death. As for Lin Wenwu, he was given 10 lashes and sent back to the Lin family. Although Lin Wenwu helped Chu Yunji quite a bit, it wasn't him who had an affair with the pig demon, nor was it him who wanted to set the pig demon free. Moreover, he had the title of Shotsai to his name, so it would take quite a cost to want him dead. But Lin Wenwu's life was far from easy from then on, to say nothing of the debt collectors who wouldn't let him off the hook. Half a month later, my parents finally arrived. My mother was dressed in a blue gown, elegant and tidy despite her age, her every move exuding the grace of a wealthy lady. Thinking of how my mother, so dignified, had suffered a stroke and been cast out into the streets, scorned by all because of me in my previous life, I could no longer hold back and threw myself into her embrace. Mother, what's wrong? Ching ching. Mother is here now. 9. Mother hugged me tightly, and father wiped away tears beside us. It was my parents' fault for being fooled by Lin Wenwu's pretentious appearance. They've brought such harm to my precious daughter. Come, let's go home. I'll never let you suffer again. My parents were about to pull me away when someone rushed out from the shadows, grabbing onto our clothes tightly. Lin Wenwu was disheveled, reeking of body odor, and it was unclear how many days it had been since he last bathed. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at me. Ching ching, ching ching. I know I was wrong. Please, just come back. It was all Chu Yunji who seduced me. That's why I made that mistake. The truth is, I've always loved you. Give me a chance to make it up to you. I took a step back in disgust. You don't love me, you love my money. If your family were still as wealthy as when I was with you, you'd never come begging to me. I studied Lin Wenwu carefully. It seemed these debt collectors hadn't disappointed me. My secret payment of several dozen taels of silver to them hadn't been in vain. Lin Wenwu froze for a moment, then suddenly roared in fury. You knew all along, didn't you? You're the one who schemed to plunge my family into debt. That day, he had just been beaten and sent home. Before he could even go to rescue Chu Yunji, he was intercepted by the debt collectors. They said the Lin family owed them a full 30,000 taels of silver. It was only now that Lin Wenwu realized I had never paid those bills that were sent over. Instead, I had someone hold on to them when I was around. They weren't in a hurry, but now that the wealthy ones have left, they're afraid of coming too late to get their money. So they've all gathered at the Lin family's doorstep. Lin Wenwu had intended to ask his mother-in-law to bring out the silver to settle the matter, but he heard her crying and wailing, saying that I had taken all the silver away, and there was none left in the house. It was only then that Lin Wenwu came to his senses. Everything the Lin family had was given by me. Without me, the Lin family would immediately become a destitute household, washing clothes for a living. So Lin Wenwu waited at the inn door for a full 3 days, just to apologize to me. When I came out, I felt a surge of satisfaction in my heart. What do you mean by scheming, Lin Wenwu? These are all things you bought for your beloved sister-in-law. Didn't you say before that 1,000 pieces of gold mean nothing, and you'd give her anything as long as Chu Yunji likes it? Then please continue giving them yourself. With that, I turned to leave, completely unaware of the murderous glint in Lin Wenwu's eyes behind me as he drew a dagger. If you won't save me, then you're coming with me to the grave. Lin Wenwu lunged at me, his face twisted with rage. My mother's face went deathly pale with fright. Ching. I tightened my grip on the long sword, ready to strike, but suddenly someone grabbed me and threw me aside. The eldest son of the Lin family kicked Lin Wenwu flying, snatched the dagger from his hand, and shouted toward the outside, "He's here!" In an instant, a mob of debt collectors surrounded Lin Wenwu, grabbing him and threatening to break his legs. Lin Wenwu wailed and sobbed, "I am a scholar, you cannot strike me." "Not anymore, you're not," elder brother Lin added. "You have committed adultery with your sister-in-law and framed your lawful wife. Your scholarly rank has been stripped. You are now nothing but a commoner. I am your brother, and you would harm me. Had I known it would come to this, I should have had mother kill you back then," Lin Wenwu shouted. 10 From his words, I learned that Lin's eldest son was quite pitiful. He and Lin Wenwu were originally cousins. After his parents passed away, his grandmother took him in to claim his house, making him call her mother. Unfortunately, she treated him poorly, making him live like a servant despite being the master. So, as soon as he reached the age to enlist, he went to the frontier. This is probably why he had no affection for the Lin family. Lin Wenwu was about to curse again when someone broke his leg and threw him somewhere unknown. I thanked Lin Jia's eldest son for saving me, took out the silver to give to him, but he shook his head. Instead, he pulled out a thick stack of banknotes from his sleeve. "After all, it's the Lin family who wronged you. These are my compensation to you." The silver notes were scattered and some had yellowed. The salaries of frontier soldiers were not high, so it seems Lin's eldest son gave me all the money. Although I hate the Lin family, I have no particular feelings toward Lin's eldest son, who never harmed me. Moreover, he is as miserable as I am. 3 years after my death, he returned home, but Lin Wenwu and Chu Yunji feared he would expose their affair, so they poisoned him to death. I shook my head and told him I had plenty of money. Lin's eldest son didn't stand on ceremony and handed me a token, telling me to call on him if I needed anything. 10 years later, I saw Lin Wenwu again at the frontier. He had been mutilated, his tongue cut out, his limbs severed, and was kept in a box as a sideshow clown. As I passed by, holding my child, Lin Wenwu abruptly stopped his act, staring fixedly at us and howling silently. Though I couldn't hear a sound, I knew he was cursing us. The troop leader, misunderstanding my gaze, thought I wanted to see the performance. He lashed the man several times with all his might before forcing him to continue. I tossed a few pieces of broken silver. The troop leader accepted them with a beaming smile. "People are just born lazy. They won't move unless you beat them." "Sir, this man used to be a scholar. He owed money and was thrown to me to settle the debt. He can even swallow swords. If you'd like to see it, I'll have him perform." I declined the troop leader's offer and walked straight ahead. Those incidents with the Lin family are long gone. My life is now even more vibrant. That's it for the first story. Don't go away. The next one is even more exciting. I raised my daughter to become the world's leading violinist, only to hear her call her sibling Mom. "Mom, that woman is making me practice the violin every day. I'm so sick of her." I was utterly shocked and forced myself to get a DNA test. Only then did I discover that my daughter was not biologically mine. My sister-in-law was her real mother. Meanwhile, my own daughter, whom I had carried for 10 months, was swapped by my mother-in-law and given to my sister-in-law, where she was neglected and died before the age of 10. My daughter, along with my sister-in-law's family, pushed me off a high-rise building after discovering the truth, and then took over all my assets. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of my delivery, and I swapped the baby my mother-in-law had replaced back to its rightful place in this family that values sons over daughters. I'm eager to see if that ungrateful wretch can still rise to fame and glory in his youth. Oh dear, it's time, it's time. May the ancestors of the Chi family bless us, and may both daughters-in-law give birth to healthy boys. The pain of childbirth replaced the excruciating agony of a fatal fall, and the rushing wind in my ears turned into the chaotic, hurried voices of people around me. Hearing my mother-in-law's booming voice once more, I was finally convinced I had been reborn back to the day I gave birth. "Mom." Before entering the delivery room, with tears in my eyes and through the pain, I called out to my mom, who was there to support me. "Go quietly and buy a highlighter and a UV light, mark the baby with it, and don't tell a soul. And besides you, don't let anyone touch the child." Although my mom was a bit puzzled, she still nodded and comforted me. "Don't worry, I'll keep a close eye on the child and prevent any kidnapping." I shook my head with pale lips. In my previous life, my mother-in-law, and husband took turns standing guard, strictly watching over, able to prevent outsiders from stealing the child, but unable to stop the biased mother-in-law replace my child. My mother-in-law has always favored the second son since childhood. This time, after her wish to have a grandson was dashed, she directly swapped the children between our two families just because our family is well off. Letting the second son's daughter be raised by me would give her the best possible life, and after we're gone, she could inherit everything we have, only to hand it all over to my second brother's family. I just never expected to uncover the truth. For money, she betrayed over 20 years of my care and upbringing, conspiring with my brother and his wife to push me from the top of a high-rise. Meanwhile, my own biological daughter, unwanted and mistreated by that same brother and his wife, suffered through 10 harsh years of hardship before tragically passing away. This time, as I touched my unborn baby, my gaze darkened. I would never allow the tragedy of my past life to happen again. The lights in the operating room dazzled my eyes. As my consciousness blurred, the baby was born, and I could no longer fight off the drowsiness, closing my eyes in exhaustion. When I woke up, it was already evening, and beside me was my mother, her face filled with anxiety and resentment. "Ingxian, your mother-in-law actually swapped the baby with your second brother's wife while I wasn't paying attention." I managed not to alert her, but I couldn't find the right moment to swap them back. She whispered fiercely in my ear, her voice low and teeth clenched. "Luckily, I followed your advice and marked them early, otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to tell the two babies apart. How can there be such a mother-in-law?" I was startled, and before I could say anything, my mother-in-law walked into the ward with a dark expression. "Both daughters-in-law gave birth to girls, shattering her dream of having a grandson." "Mother-in-law, didn't you say you were going to make chicken soup? I'm here, so hurry up and go." Out of respect for my mother being present, she put on a considerate act and sent my mother away. After they left, they turned back and said to me, "Since Ingxian, you're awake now, I'm going to take a nap. You take care of the kids, and keep an eye on the second son's family. Also, remember to change the diaper." Without waiting for me to respond, my mother-in-law gave a couple of instructions and left, afraid of being asked to do more. This presented the perfect opportunity for me. The ward was silent, it was dark outside, and with the lights off, the faint glow from the hallway barely illuminated the layout of the room. Watching my younger siblings and the infant sleeping soundly in the next bed, I crept over, carefully picked up the baby, and swiftly swapped them back. Then, on the tiny toenail of her right big toe, I found the faintly glowing mark. I held my precious child, lost and found again, as hot tears of overwhelming emotion streamed down my face. I just held the child like that until my husband, Qixing, arrived in the middle of the night to take over. In my past life, when I told my husband the truth, he was filled with fury but utterly powerless to change anything. In the end, he somehow managed to accept the devastating news of our children's death. He even tried to convince me, "Wife, the dead cannot be brought back to life. Our daughter was raised by us from birth, even though she was from my brother's family." "But she still called you mom, didn't she, after my death?" He followed the advice of that ungrateful wretch and transferred all our family's assets to the second son's family. From courtship to marriage, Qixing and I have weathered life storms together for decades. He's a good man in every way, successful in his career, devoted to his family, and a loving husband. The only thing is he's far too soft-hearted and blindly filial to a fault. That's why, for now, I have no intention of telling him about the baby swap. By the time Qixing rushed over, my mother-in-law was already heading back to our second son's place, lugging a big bag of baby clothes. "Mom," he stopped his mother-in-law, glancing at his sleeping sister-in-law and the child beside her. "What will the baby wear if you take all the clothes?" The mother-in-law snorted disdainfully. "Why would a little girl need new clothes? These are for my precious grandson. She shouldn't wear away her brother's good fortune." My mother-in-law's voice wasn't loud, but it still clearly reached my ears in the quiet of the deep night. "Yes, my real biological daughter, who lived with my younger brother and sister-in-law in my previous life, never had a single new piece of clothing. My daughter was malnourished, skinny, and frail, half a head shorter than other kids her age, so my mother-in-law suggested giving her our old clothes to wear, where I was too embarrassed to even show her the clothes that were too worn out. I picked out a few that were just barely presentable to give her, never imagining that those would be the child's only clothes for the entire year. Summer was manageable. My mother-in-law could patch together a few scraps of old fabric, and that would count as a change of clothes. But when winter came, my daughter could only wear those thin, old garments. She would stomp her feet against the cold, her hands and face turning a purplish blue. In contrast, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were dressed more and more stylishly and warmly. Occasionally when I went back to my hometown, I couldn't stand it anymore and bought scarves and new clothes for the whole family, but my sister-in-law returned only my daughter's cotton coat. She asked me to buy a black one, saying the child was mischievous and clothes got dirty easily. I didn't suspect anything and got a black one instead. Only during the new year did I notice that the coat and scarf were worn by my younger brother. It turned out that the boy didn't wear the pink cotton jacket. My daughter was still wearing that thin, faded old coat that exposed her wrists. The baby in my arms smacked her lips. She was peacefully asleep. With my recent tears on her little mouth, I gently wiped the water stain from the corner of her mouth, unconsciously tightening my arms around her. The mother-in-law pointed to a bulging plastic bag on the ground. Those are Gongzi's old clothes from when he was a child. She can wear those. Qixing was shocked. Mom, how old are those clothes? Are they even clean? What do you know? This is how you raise them to be strong. When it comes to being easy to raise, Qixing seemed to recall something and asked weakly, what about the name? Wouldn't they have chosen an easy-to-raise name? The old lady's face lit up with pride. Her formal name is Jiaodi, and her nickname can just be Go Dan. Qixing's lips moved, his face full of disbelief. Would Gongzi and his wife agree to that? Why disagree? What's wrong with this name? The mother-in-law retorted defiantly. This name is good. A self-deprecating smile played on my lips. The ungrateful wretch who once clung to me in my previous life often bullied my daughter because of this name. This time, I'll make her bear this name as well. She didn't like my teachings, she didn't like the new clothes I bought for her, and she didn't like the violin lessons I signed her up for. She didn't like anything I gave her. She only yearns for her younger brother and sister's family. In this life, I want to see if she can achieve academic success and early fame in her beloved mother's home, just as she did in the previous life. Her mother-in-law was not idle at all, taking great care of her younger brother and sister, and those old clothes quickly found their way onto Jiaodi's body. Then she picked up an unknown brand of milk powder placed on the cabinet, scooped out 2 spoonfuls, and mixed it with hot water to feed the hungry baby. This action left Qixing and the family member of the patient in the next bed trembling with fear. After feeding her, my mother-in-law came over to take a look at my baby. Qixing stood up to stop her. Mom, we've hired a postpartum doula. She can handle tasks like feeding. You should take it easy. What's the point of hiring a maternity nurse? It's just throwing money away. Otherwise, you can't take care of both of them all by yourself, can you? After much persuasion, Qixing finally managed to get his mother-in-law to leave. My gaze fell back on Jiaodi. She is crying nonstop because the milk she just drank was too hot. Maybe I overestimated her. She might not even live to adulthood. I originally thought my daughter's death in my previous life was an accident, but now it seems there were signs all along. Sure enough, not long after, Jiaodi developed a fever. Large patches of rashes broke out all over their body. It was unclear whether it was an allergic reaction to the old clothes or the formula milk. The absurd part was that when Jiaodi cried and fussed incessantly on Zhang Yangyang's bed, neither she nor her mother-in-law took it seriously. Instead, annoyed by the noise, they just kept rocking her, hoping to lull her to sleep that way. It was the nurse on rounds who first noticed something was wrong. By the time the fever was detected, Jiaodi was already barely breathing, her voice a faint whisper. Her little face was flushed bright red, with large patches of redness spreading across her body. Zhang Yangyang showed no concern whatsoever. She thought it was my daughter. She even squeezed a bag of breast milk for me, saying she was worried my daughter wouldn't eat well. As soon as she turned around, I unhesitatingly tossed it into the trash. In my previous life, it was Zhang Yangyang's idea to have me killed. I've always treated her well, fulfilled my duties as the eldest sister-in-law, and helped their family out on numerous occasions. Yet in the end, I was utterly destroyed. For a fever, you just need to bundle up and sweat it out. Isn't that how all us kids got through it back in the day? My mother-in-law shouted at the top of her lungs, blocking the nurse who was trying to call a doctor, while grabbing another old piece of clothing to smother over Jiaodi's head on the door. Even the family members of patients in the next room couldn't stand it anymore. Everyone in the ward, except Zhang Yangyang, was accusing the mother-in-law. Embarrassed, the mother-in-law, under the nurse's insistence, frantically rushed the child to the ICU. Admitted to the ICU just 2 days after birth. I looked at Chijadi's medical tag, my eyes reddening. A boundless pain in my heart. She was the daughter I had loved for most of my previous life. Perhaps she will breathe her last today. Her life was about to end before it even began. A sharp pain surged in her chest, mingled with numbness and a bone-chilling coldness. In my previous life, it was her who pushed me off the balcony with her own hands at the last moment of my fall. I had already grabbed the corner of her shirt. If I didn't let go, at least I could take someone down with me. But that person was my daughter, whom I had loved and cherished for over 20 years, from the infant in swaddling clothes, to her first babbling words, to the graceful young woman she became. She was the daughter I watched grow up, step by step. In that final moment, I ultimately let go. Little did I know, she had even prepared false evidence of my fall from the building. I died with my eyes unclosed, leaving my mother to mourn her child, her heart breaking with grief. Was I not also her daughter? Was my own daughter not innocent as well? Her life was ultimately saved on the day I was discharged. Chijadi was transferred from the ICU to a regular ward. This fever really took her to the brink of death. Her life was saved, but her liver and kidneys suffered irreversible damage, leaving her with lasting complications. The doctor hesitated before the family, but eventually whispered, "It's unlikely this child will live to adulthood." At this moment, Chijadi seems to be full of energy. Her eyes are rolling around, curious about everything around her, and she is also more active and obedient than before, especially when she sees Zhang Yangyang. She becomes even more affectionate. Zhang Yangyang's maternal family seems unaware of the child swap, and they cherish this granddaughter who narrowly escaped death, holding her with great affection. Couldn't let go. Kazadi obediently clung to the grown-up's clothes. She was affectionate with everyone except me. She would shut her eyes the moment she saw me. I glanced once and was ready to be discharged under my mom's arrangements. Just before stepping out of the ward, I recalled this familiar action in her previous life. She would pat and turn her head away, closing her eyes. How could such a young baby have such independent awareness? I turned around and walked back, reappearing in Chijadi's line of sight. Sure enough, her eyes, which had just opened, closed once more. I quietly stepped back. Zhang Yangyang's younger brother was holding a harmonica, tooting away as he tried to amuse her. The baby's attention was captured, her eyes seeming to light up as she watched the harmonica amused the elders with laughter. I forced a cold smile as well. It was then that I was certain she had also been reborn. She doesn't seem to know the news of her destined short life. Chijadi's gaze was constantly drawn to the harmonica, as if reminiscing about the boundless glory of performing under the spotlight in this lifetime. Even though she has mastered the violin to perfection, could she still become the concert master without me? Jadi, her mother-in-law picked her up, cooing at her like a playful cat, and upon hearing this unpleasant name, Chijadi froze for a moment before bursting into loud wails. Come on. The more she cried, the more enthusiastically her grandmother tried to soothe her. In the end, with no other choice, her grandmother resorted to calling her by her childhood nickname, Goodner. I couldn't help but laugh as I walked along. After being discharged from the hospital, my mother-in-law volunteered to come take care of me during my postpartum recovery. I know, taking care of me during my postpartum recovery is just an excuse. The real reason is to get me to give up my gold medal postpartum doula for my sister-in-law. Besides, was she really coming to take care of me? She was clearly coming to enjoy herself. Last time I was in postpartum recovery, she cooked at home entirely according to her own tastes, using heavy oil, salt, and chili, leaving me with no way to eat. Ugh, I've told her countless times, but it's always the same to outsiders. She just says it's me, the daughter-in-law, who's picky and hard to please. She even often pockets the grocery money to give to the second son's family. When she makes soup, she eats a portion herself first, sends a portion to the second son's family, saves a portion for Qixing, and then serves me whatever's left, watered down. They wouldn't even buy formula, insisting I breastfeed exclusively, claiming it was all for the baby's own good. At night, they'd sleep soundly, leaving the baby entirely to me, and wouldn't let Qixing help either, always just paying lip service to taking on the work. What's a grown man doing looking after a baby? Qixing has work tomorrow, we're home all day, just leave the baby with us. Over time, Qixing stopped speaking up for me too. After a month of such torment, I was almost postpartum depressed when I finally left the confinement period. Instead, my mother-in-law gained a good reputation among the neighbors. In contrast, my sister-in-law Zhang Yangyang, though not as well off as our family, hired a great maternity nanny, and when we met again at the full moon banquet, her complexion was rosy, radiant, and she had recovered remarkably well. That top-tier maternity nurse was someone my husband, Qixing, pulled strings to secure with great difficulty, but in the end, Because my mother-in-law insisted on taking care of me during my postpartum confinement, we had to give her up. We gave her to their family. All the good fortune went to Zhang Yang. We did all the hard work only for someone else to reap the benefits. Watching my mother-in-law, undeterred by the initial refusal, hauling bag after bag of luggage into the living room, I knew she had already convinced my soft-hearted husband, "Honey, you've gone and made another decision for the two of us again." But this time, before my mother-in-law could even finish unpacking her things, my own mother walked right in with the postpartum nurse. "Oh, mother-in-law, have you come to look after Yingxian during her confinement? Our Yingxian is truly blessed. Not only did you hire a nurse for the two of them, but you're also here yourself, taking on all the hard work personally. Hire a confinement nanny. What for?" My mother-in-law was stunned for a moment, then looked at the nanny. "Didn't I tell you to go to the second son's house?" My mom swiftly cut her off, pulling out her phone to record a video for her social media feed. Look at Yingxuan's wonderful mother-in-law. Not only did she pay for the confinement nanny, but she's also here herself, personally helping out during the postpartum month because she just couldn't leave it to anyone else. "Come on, mother-in-law, look at the camera, let's take a group photo." The mother-in-law pushed my mom's hand away, about to retort. When she saw passers-by outside the door peeking in to watch the commotion, my mom immediately started greeting everyone, and even introduced the maternity nurse to each neighbor to get familiar with that distraction. The post was already shared on Moments. The mother-in-law forced a smile. "Mother, please come in quickly. It's not good for Yingxian to catch a draft with the door open." My mom took a long, satisfied walk, basking in the neighbors' compliments, and only then returned to sit on the sofa showing off on her social media while asking about dinner. Qixing was also a bit confused, but he first greeted the nanny to settle in and then ordered from the nearest restaurant. My mother-in-law's face was very displeased. My mom showed up uninvited, bringing along the nanny who was supposed to be at my second brother's house. Most importantly, my mom actually claimed that the nanny was paid for by my mother-in-law. You know, nannies don't come cheap, let alone this one who seems to be a top-tier nanny. Wouldn't that make her pay a hefty price? My mother-in-law shot a withering glare at my mother, who was sitting arrogantly on the sofa, before switching to a warm, gentle expression and entering my room. "Yingxian, dear," she rubbed her hands together, her gaze involuntarily drifting to the baby sleeping soundly in my arms. "What's the matter with your mother? I already said I was coming to take care of you during your confinement. Why on earth did she bring a maternity nurse along?" I scoffed inwardly. From the very beginning, my husband and I had agreed to hire a postpartum doula with our own money. It was she who butted in uninvited. Not only did she refuse to listen to reason and insisted on coming to take care of me, but she also went behind my back and got Qixing to agree to give the doula to his younger brother's family. And now, with what she's saying, it's as if we're the ungrateful ones who want to have our cake and eat it too. I pulled the little quilt over my baby, shielding him from my mother-in-law's sickening gaze. Seeing that I remained silent, my mother-in-law confidently laid out her plan. "How about this? I'll come and take care of you during your postpartum period. I'll definitely be more attentive than those outsiders. As for the postpartum doula, why not give it to the second son's family? Yang doesn't have anyone to take care of her. It wouldn't be right to have her mother come, would it? Besides, you already have a postpartum doula here. It would be perfect to give it to her." I lifted my eyelids and spoke slowly. "Mom, you're at an age where you should be enjoying family happiness. You really don't need to come and take care of me." "Take care of me?" My mother-in-law pursed her lips, her eyes flashing with disdain, almost rolling her eyes. I smiled instead. "If you ask me, you should hire a nanny for your sister-in-law, and you can enjoy some leisure time yourself." My mother-in-law clearly hadn't expected her usual pushover to suddenly have a backbone. Her eyes widened in shock, as if she'd just heard the most outrageous thing imaginable, and her whole body trembled with rage. "Do you think everyone is as wasteful as you are? Every single penny you spend was earned through my son's blood, sweat, and tears." She paced back and forth in the room, jabbing a finger in my direction while huffing and puffing. "Let's not use this maternity nurse anymore. Give her to the second son's family. You're the eldest daughter-in-law. You should consider your brother-in-law's household. I had already settled it with Xingzi. And then you don't trust me. Your own child's grandmother, but you'd rather put your faith in a complete stranger." Little Bao was frightened and began wailing. Hearing the commotion, my husband rushed into the room. My mother-in-law and I were locked in a silent tug-of-war, neither willing to yield. The room was so quiet, the only sounds were the infant's cries and the soft, coaxing murmurs. Qixing looked at his angry mother-in-law, then at me with a cold expression, and pulled her out. "Mom, let's listen to Yingxian and let the nanny stay. It's the same if you go to Gongzi's place." What do you mean the same? You have no idea. The nanny soothed the baby, my husband calmed his mother, and my mom, oh, Mrs. Yang, how is Yang recovering from her C-section? Don't worry. Our in-law spent 30,000 yuan to hire a top-notch postpartum caregiver. Between sisters-in-law, we won't favor one over the other, and when Yang is discharged and starts her, we'll definitely hire an even more expensive one. My mom added my sister-in-law's mom as a friend at the hospital earlier, and they're now video chatting. What? My in-law looks upset. No, she doesn't. My mom turned her head and came face to face with my mother-in-law, who was seething with pent-up anger, her face flushed a deep, purplish red. What's the matter, dear in-law? My mother asked the question knowingly, all while deliberately keeping the video call on. Her eyes darted, and then her expression suddenly darkened. Can't be that you think the maternity nanny is too expensive, right? I already posted it on my social media. Backing out now would make my old friends laugh their teeth out. Isn't it for a mother-in-law to financially and physically support her daughter-in-law during her postpartum period? How come it's different in your family? Right, Mom was being aggressive, her face flushed with anger, as she angrily ended a conversation that had just been going well, and she sat on the sofa with her hands on her hips. My mother-in-law was being held back by my husband, ready to argue, when her phone inappropriately rang. Mom gave a cold glance. It was Zhang Yangyang's mom calling, her temples throbbing with rage. The mother-in-law took a deep breath, pinching her fingers, before finally stepping onto the balcony to answer the call. Her words were now laced with flattery, a far cry from her earlier haughty demeanor. Zhang Yangyang was notoriously difficult around here. In her early years of marriage, she and her mother-in-law would have a minor spat every 3 days and a full-blown fight every 5, retreating to her parents' home every other fortnight. Her parents were certainly no pushovers either. The phone call dragged on past midnight. My mother-in-law alternated between lamenting her bad luck and throwing a fit, finally delivering an ultimatum to us, the young couple. If you insist on hiring a maternity nurse, that's your business, but you'll have to pay for it yourselves. She packed up her barely unpacked luggage and moved out of our house that very night. As she left, she couldn't resist cursing, "You ungrateful wretch. Forgetting your mother the moment you got a wife." With a face full of guilt, the husband saw his own mother off, only to turn around and face his cold-faced mother-in-law. What a display of authority from my in-law. Is this the kind of life our Xian had to endure in your household? Qixing was at a loss, on the verge of tears. In the end, the mother-in-law couldn't hire a maternity nanny for Zhang Yangyang. 1. There wasn't enough time, and all the available nannies were booked. 2. Zhang Yangyang's demands were too high, insisting on hiring a top-tier nanny, which the mother-in-law simply couldn't bear to pay for. She lay on the ground, making a scene over and over, and eventually, she managed to get Zhang Yangyang to compromise, though it's unclear how. After a month of calm, the mother-in-law started planning the full moon banquet with a stern face. Since the 2 children were born on the same day, it wasn't feasible to hold the full moon banquet on 2 separate days. The mother-in-law's face was so dark it seemed about to drip with water, unwilling to settle for just one set of gifts. When they met again at the full moon banquet, Zhang Yangyang no longer had the radiant look of the previous life but appeared haggard. I heard she and her mother-in-law were at each other's throats during her postpartum confinement, and it seems she didn't come out of it any better. Instead, she began to pay more attention to her daughter, and even her usually biased mother-in-law couldn't help but praise Kazadi for being well-behaved except when calling her by name. Yet, Kazadi herself seemed listless and dispirited, with inherent deficiencies and being subjected to all kinds of self-destructive behavior. It's no wonder she's not doing well. During the drawing of lots, she went through a circle of items, eventually picking up the harmonica her little uncle had been playing with, though she did so with, even the gaps were filled with mortar and grime, and the harmonica still had fresh saliva from just being played. She really couldn't let go of her dream of music. I deliberately pulled the harmonica from her 2 small hands. The real business is to get your mother a son. What future is there in playing a harmonica? The adults present all murmured in agreement. Kazadi turned her head away in a huff, refusing to look at me. Qi Gang, the second son, went even further by throwing away his harmonica and shoving a photo of their complete family of 4 into her hands. She burst into loud wails. Qi Zhaodi's good days were numbered, only lasting these 2 years. When Qi Yaozu is born 2 years later, that's when she'll really have something to cry about. She was no longer an only child, she had become her brother's servant. The following years passed in relative calm, thanks in no small part to her efforts. Blessed with memories from her past life, Qi Zhaodi was mature and precociously wise, since she had indeed brought a younger brother into the family. Zhang Yangyang seemed to look upon her with a newfound, almost merciful, and surprisingly, treated her much better, but all that goodness came at the cost of her own sacrifices. She had to wash her brother's clothes, cook breakfast for the whole family, give her mother shoulder massages, buy cigarettes for her father, and help her grandmother with the grocery shopping. As for princess dresses, little cakes, or a violin, such things simply didn't exist in her world. To her mother, the only thing worth showing off was her top-of-the-class grades in this life. She had to rack her brains and exhaust herself to obtain the very material comforts that had come to her effortlessly in her past life, and they were still far inferior to what she had enjoyed before. As usual, I bought new clothes and scarves for the whole family when returning to my hometown for the new year. This time, however, I deliberately chose for Chijadi a black one. Chijadi was completely outmatched when it came to choosing between her beloved son and her stepdaughter. Zhang Yangyang snatched her clothes away without hesitation. This time, Chijadi was the one left freezing in the winter. How could she endure this, having been pampered and privileged in her previous life? In this lifetime, forget about being a principal player, she couldn't even get her foot in the door of the music world. When she was 7, she threw herself into my arms, crying and insisting that I was her real mother. She shoved my biological daughter, Yao Yao, into the snow. Children say the darndest things, but the looks on everyone's faces were far from amused. Before I could even react, Zhang Yangyang yanked her back and landed a solid slap across her face. How dare you spout such nonsense? Haven't I always treated you well? Say that again and I'll hit you every single time. Chijadi fell hard into the snow, like a kite whose string had snapped, plummeting weightlessly. But when I turned my head, the sight that met me was Zhang Yangyang carefully helping my daughter to her feet. Her 5-year-old brother was making faces at her, winking and sticking out his tongue. Chijadi's face alternated between pale and flushed, unsure if it was from the cold or the beating. I pulled her up, brushed the snow off her old clothes, and this time, it was her turn to wear someone else's hand-me-downs. She was no longer the cherished only daughter of our family, but now just Yaozu's sister. The child has a fever and is talking nonsense. Sure enough, when the mother-in-law touched the child's forehead, it was burning hot. But just this afternoon, she had Chijadi wash all the vegetables for tonight's New Year's Eve dinner with cold water. You silly child, you don't say you're feeling unwell, but instead, you're saying all these strange things. The mother-in-law is going to use her old home remedies again to help her reduce the fever by sweating it out. In recent years, Chijadi's health has been poor, with frequent minor illnesses, and Zhang Yangyang and her mother-in-law's limited patience and affection for her have been gradually worn away by her repeated illnesses. Gradually, all patience and goodwill have been exhausted. Each time she falls ill, it's rare for her to be taken to the hospital. Not only did Zhang Yangyang not stop her mother-in-law, she even fetched a feather duster and began whipping Chijadi with it. You've ruined our perfectly good New Year's Eve dinner, you jinx. It's the Lunar New Year. Don't hit the child. Only Qixing spoke up in her defense. In our previous life, when she was our daughter, she never suffered a single beating. Her parents, cherished her dearly, holding her in the palms of our hands. After I was pushed from the high-rise, Qixing was utterly heartbroken and fell into despair. She seized this opportunity to convince him to divide the family fortune and give it to her biological father and mother. Later, as he lay on his sickbed, racked with illness and with little time left, he couldn't scrape together a single penny for treatment. All the money was taken by that ungrateful wretch. Chijadi stood frozen in place, neither running nor dodging. Her soul was that of an adult, but the dignity and pride of adulthood had been worn away by the daily abuse. She looked down at her hands. A pair of delicate hands that once played world-class music are now clumsy and covered with frostbite. Can the bird that has fallen into the whirlpool of life return to its noble perch? The fever won't subside, and the night seems endless, with only tiny snowflakes falling from the abyss. Chijadi is talking nonsense again. Her previous life was so vastly different from her current one that she began to wonder if it had all been a magnificent dream. Her mother-in-law kept wrapping her in thick blankets, but eventually got tired of it and went back to her room to sleep, confident that everything would eventually be fine. It had been like this for all these years. Chijadi was covered in a cold sweat. When Yao Yao brought her water, she seemed to regain some clarity. She stared at Yao Yao, as if struck by some horrific thought. Her eyes were wide and fixed. Before she began to sob uncontrollably, she thought of her previous life, of that child who had died before reaching the age of 10, the one Zhang Yangyang had failed to raise. In this life, she was that child. She was 7 years old. Chijadi had been running a high fever that wouldn't go down, and Qixing couldn't bear to see her suffer, so he called an ambulance for her on New Year's Eve. The red and blue lights flickered across the snowy ground, and many Villagers, finding it inauspicious, stayed indoors, unwilling to come out to watch the fireworks. The two got into the car amidst the cursing and yelling of a family. Chijati clung to Qixing's trouser leg like a drowning person grabbing a lifeline, kneeling on the ground and crying, alternating between calling him dad and uncle. All I ask is that he adopt me. Zhang Yangyang next to me kept calling Qixing. Taking my daughter to see a doctor is minor, but spending money is a big deal. It's already bad luck to call 120 and go to the hospital on New Year's Eve. What if the person doesn't make it and dies during the new year? That would be even worse luck. Most importantly, don't bring bad luck to Yaozu, her precious son. What's the point of saving her? The doctor said she wouldn't live past adulthood. And all these years I've just treated her as if she didn't exist. As long as she's alive, she'll only block Yaozu's fortune. Forget it, brother. Give her the phone, I'll talk to her. Zhang Yangyang mercilessly delivered the devastating news that Chijati wouldn't live to adulthood, ignoring the wailing on the other side, and ordered her to get off the ambulance. Immediately go home, Mom. From a distance, I could hear the heart-wrenching and desperate cries. Zhang Yangyang frowned and moved the phone away, muttering curses under his breath. Why would you do that to me? Chi Yao isn't, she isn't, I'm your daughter, I am. Chijati revealed the truth, and Zhang Yangyang muttered, what nonsense, she must be delirious. The hand reaching for the phone trembled slightly. Immediately, she didn't even bother to watch the fireworks and rushed back into the house, holding Chi Yaozu in a panic. What good is knowing the truth? What good is regret? One reaps what one sows. There's no turning back. Chijati stayed in the hospital for several days, and apart from her uncle Qixing, no one came to visit her. This new year, she spent it alone in the hospital. On the day she was discharged, the overcast sky began to snow again. She is much better, both physically and mentally, as if the prophecy of not living past 18 was the last straw, or as if Zhang Yangyang and her mother-in-law regretted their actions. Chijati, the household began to act recklessly. She started deliberately picking fights with her mother-in-law and her own mother. Feeling guilty, the two initially tried to endure, but eventually, pushed to their limit, Zhang Yangyang once again grabbed the feather duster and gave her a thorough scolding. I'm your birth mother, I gave birth to you, now you're trying to boss me around. Even if I made a mistake, it's not like. Midway through her sentence, she suddenly couldn't continue. Back then, she had watched as her mother-in-law dressed Chijati in hand-me-downs and mixed her formula, and it was she who turned a blind eye to the infant's ceaseless wailing. See you, all these years, she was treated like a servant, ordered around at will. She had always believed that child was my daughter, that's why she remained unmoved. Zhang Yangyang sat on the ground, weeping with her head in her hands. Kazati stood there, perfectly calm. Then, using Zhang Yangyang's phone, she called the police. There's a case of child abuse. The entire family, save for the precious heir Yaozu, was rounded up and neatly presented at the police station. The soft-hearted female police officer held Chijati's frail body, her tears falling one by one into her straw-like hair. My husband and I were summoned as witnesses. Thanks to my mother-in-law's silver tongue and Qixing's good-for-nothing kindness, the group didn't receive much punishment. Chijati had no psychological preparation for this outcome at all. She completely lost her composure, pointing at Qixing and yelling at him as if he had wronged her so much. How could you say that? You've seen me suffer all these years. How could you? You're me. You're. The last word was never spoken. As they left the police station, the mother-in-law was extremely smug, letting out a disdainful snort. Who does he think he is? He's your uncle, right? Humph. He's my son, of course, he's on my side. Chijati turned her head away, stiffening her neck as she wiped away her tears, but the family's guilt toward her had completely vanished. She actually called the police on them. If this time they really ended up in jail with a criminal record, what would happen then? Although Chijati was doomed to not live long, the family's precious son Yaozu almost couldn't take the civil service exam. After peacefully sending off both of us, Zhang Yangyang and her mother-in-law closed the door and beat Chijati savagely again. This time, she truly became obedient, as death kept approaching her repeatedly. I remembered the first time that child performed on stage, which seemed to be around the same age as now. It was late spring, under the brilliant stage lights. She stood at the very center dressed in her little gown. She didn't feel the chill at all. Her first violin performance wasn't her best, earning only a bronze medal, yet she was thrilled and promised me she'd practice even harder. I don't know when it started, but practicing the violin became, in her words, the oppressive pressure I forced upon her. I watched the gate grow smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. In my past life, when my own daughter was this age, what kind of life did she lead? That tightly shut gate gradually shrank to a tiny dot. Spring still felt a long way off. I hadn't expected the day I'd return to my Hometown again to come so soon. The old family home was utterly consumed by a raging fire, and the once boisterous Qi family members were nowhere to be found. Qi Xing's legs gave way, and he stumbled forward, collapsing into a pile of ashes, wailing for his parents. According to the neighbors, it was Qi Jiadi who bought the gasoline. At the time, she was muttering about never being cold again, something about a carnival, spring, and the like words, and the Qi family members who were screaming to save their own lives the moment the fire broke out. Yet, for some reason, not a single one of them managed to escape. The sole survivor turned out to be 5-year-old Qi Yaozu. It was a miraculous stroke of luck amidst the tragedy. He was wounded in his manhood, and the Qi family line was thus doomed to end, a stroke of misfortune within a stroke of luck. As the sole eyewitness, Qi Yaozu was placed under special protective custody. When he awoke, he had become somewhat unhinged. My sister's trying to kill me, she's going to kill me. She was still singing in the fire, waving her hands around. Mom, where's Mom? Is Mom dead? Sobbing, am I going to die? In his disjointed account, the police learned the truth of the matter. The fire was indeed set by Qi Jiadi, but at first, it seemed everyone could escape. She directly took Qi Yaozu hostage and ordered everyone not to run. Only Zhang Yangyang stopped. Only the mother couldn't bear to part with her child. The mother-in-law hesitated for just a moment, while Qi Gang didn't even look back. What's the point of the Qi family's lineage or their heirloom when it comes to saving one's own life? Qi Jiadi held a knife to Qi Yaozu's neck, her emotions running high as she sobbed about past lives and present ones. Before she could finish, Qi Gang and his mother returned. The front door had already been locked. They were about to jump from the second floor, and coincidentally, Qi Jiadi was standing at the stairwell. Thick smoke billowed everywhere. Before Qi Jiadi could utter a few words, she was choked by the fumes and lost her grip on the knife. Qi Gang was the first to charge upstairs, only to be stabbed in the lower back by her. The mother-in-law was terrified, trembling, and not daring to step forward. Seizing this opening, Qi Yaozu dashed toward the second floor. Mom, come with me. I heard my uncle asking you for money. If you'd known it was me from the start, would you have treated me this way? Zhang Yangyang remained silent, his figure obscured by the thick smoke. Qi Jiadi staggered, and her mother-in-law seized the chance to step forward and shove her to the ground. Jinx, what kind of karma did I accumulate to meet someone like you? A jinx. But Zhang Yangyang grabbed her hair, shouting with a mix of anger and tears, it's all your fault. You're the one who did this to my daughter. You're the one who did this to my family. Amidst the pitch-black smoke and the searing flames, Qi Yaozu looked back and saw only two women locked in a struggle. Hearing a fragmented, hoarse melody, his heart hammering in his chest, he didn't stop to wonder why no one was following him. Trembling, he leapt from the second floor. To my surprise, I opened my eyes and saw my uncle. He threw himself into Qi Xing's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Uncle, the police officer said I survived a great disaster and will have good fortune. Now that I have no home, can I stay with you? Grandma said that Yao Yao is just a girl and will eventually get married. My expression gradually turned cold. With tears in his eyes, Qi Xing gently pried Yaozu's chubby little hand away and refitted the oxygen mask over his face, fearing the fire alone might not finish them all off. Qi Jiadi also poisoned the entire family's food. As we left the hospital, the snow began to fall again. Spring is still far away. Spring will come. Story 2. On the day of their 30th wedding anniversary, the husbands, White Moonlight, got divorced. The White Moonlight proclaimed her desire to enjoy life and set off on a solo RV trip. Unable to bear the thought of his White Moonlight enduring hardships alone, the husband decided to divorce me and accompany her. The son, who had been raised for over 2 decades, thought his father's ideas were forward-thinking. Dad, go for it boldly. You only live once. Don't leave any regrets. I support you. I asked them, what about me? A man remains a boy until he dies. Don't mess things up, my son looked at me with a hint of disdain. If I were my dad, I'd choose Aunt Lu too. I'm completely heartbroken. If men have the right to pursue their lives, so should I. I don't want this family anymore. Su Wen's White Moonlight has finally divorced. He was so overwhelmed by the news that he burst into tears on the spot. I sat on the sofa, watching him eagerly busy himself, not minding the trouble of retrieving the marriage certificate from the depths of the cabinet. Then he put on his reading glasses, trembling, and opened his phone, writing one character at a time. How to apply for divorce. The volume button on the phone was turned up to the maximum, and the sound from the video filled the entire house. The trendy vocabulary left Su Wen a bit puzzled, but he stubbornly recorded each word one by one. Then he replied to Baiyu's message on WeChat. Don't be afraid, yeah, I'll be with you wherever you go. His gentle tone was a sharp blade, completely tearing away the thin veil that had shrouded our decades of marriage. As usual, I placed his favorite tea on the desk, then fidgeted with my clothes and looked at him, feeling utterly lost. can we not get a divorce? No, I've already missed out on so many years with Yaya. I can't miss out on her any longer. As I looked at his still handsome face in his old age, my heart suddenly ached. What about me? What about the 30 years we spent together? The 30 years I devoted to managing the household and raising our children for you. With a roar, I let out all the bitterness and pain of these years. Suwon frowned, glanced at me, then turned and sat down at his desk, saying nothing more to me. I was on the verge of a breakdown, shaking him desperately, begging for an explanation, but he just sat there in silence, driving me out of my mind. But I remember I wasn't always like this. Before I got married, everyone called me the life of the party. Suwon was handsome, but his family was poor, so even if a girl was interested, she'd ultimately back off because of his family background, so he kept putting it off, and before he knew it, he became an older single man. Right around that time, I went to take care of some business and ran into him. He walked over with a book of poetry tucked under his arm, wearing a white shirt and navy blue trousers. He stood tall and straight, and with a gentle smile, he pointed me toward the factory director's office. I was captivated by his smile, and in the days that followed, I found myself paying more attention to him. I didn't expect the factory to be so small that I would run into him wherever I went. After a while, I began to sense something was off and started to suspect. Coincidentally, he gave me a movie ticket and invited me to watch a film. On the way back, he confessed to me, "Meow meow, I admire you very much, and I hope we can build a family together in the future." The girl's heart was ignited by this simple love confession, and it just couldn't be stopped. When we first confirmed our relationship, we were absolutely inseparable, so I quickly introduced him to my parents, submitted an application to the organization, and got married. After we got married, my parents, feeling sorry for us, used their own transfer quotas to get us moved back to the city. Suwon was clever and eager to learn, and he quickly won the favor of his superiors. At the time, I thought this was the next step in our wonderful life together. But the first thing Suwon did after his promotion was to arrange for Luyu to be transferred to our factory. I suspected I was overthinking things, but I couldn't help myself. I opened Suwon's diary. It was then that I realized he had been secretly in love with Luyu all along, but Luyu was afraid of holding him back, so they never got together. When I first saw this, I felt like the sky had fallen. I had a huge fight with Suwon, and I even wanted to cause a scene at their workplace, making them both lose face. But I discovered I was pregnant. The child became my weakness. As the saying goes, with a stepmother comes a stepfather. Persuaded by my parents, I swallowed my pride and endured the situation, continuing to be Suwon's wife. Yet Suwon enjoyed my care while continuing to take care of Luyu. Even though she was already a wife and mother, every time we argue, he just shuts up and stays silent, driving me absolutely crazy. Over time, everyone started saying I was crazy, but now, even this broken life is about to fall apart. I covered my face, crouched down, and took a long time to calm myself. When I wanted to head home, I realized I had no idea where I was. It was late at night. Thankfully, from my time in the countryside when I was young, I'm still in pretty good shape, but with no lights around, I still took a few nasty falls. In the end, a young guy fishing by the river spotted me and took me to the police station. It was past 2 in the morning when the police escorted me home. The front door was tightly shut, and after a long while of knocking, my son finally opened the door. Half asleep, as soon as he saw me, he started to complain, "Mom, can you please not cause trouble in the middle of the night?" The police lectured him briefly and left the house. His son was a bit angry and threw the pillow directly on the ground. I brushed off the dust on my clothes and for the first time felt this son of mine was a bit unfamiliar. He had been in poor health since childhood and couldn't eat many things. Eating them would cause a rash. To take better care of him, I voluntarily left the factory and became a full-time homemaker. When he was in 6th grade, he got chickenpox and ran a fever at night. I was so worried that I stayed by his bedside all night until his fever broke, but then I fell ill. Suwon, however, didn't return until after their son was discharged from the hospital, as he was accompanying Luyu on a business trip. When our son needed to pay for a selective school in junior high, Suwon couldn't bring himself to ask for a bonus. I humiliated myself by going to the dean and making a scene just to get him into a good school. When my son was in his final year of high school, I tutored him and prepared 3 meals and midnight snacks for him every day, varying the dishes. I went above and beyond for this son, taking such good care of him that he grew into a strong and healthy young man. But now, he shows no concern for my late return at night and completely ignores my dirty, mud-covered clothes. Yes, just resentment and impatience towards my late return. Tears were about to fall again, but I held them back and finally spoke up. "Your dad wants a divorce and is going on a trip with Luyu. What do you think about this? A man remains a boy until his death. don't make things worse, the son said, giving me a strange look before suddenly revealing a contemptuous smile. If I were my dad, I'd choose Aunt Lou too. Why is that? I clutched my chest, feeling the last shred of hope finally shatter. Why? I've given my heart and soul to the two men in this house for most of my life. Why are you treating me like this? Because you're so annoying. Every day when you come home, you just yell at my dad. All you ever do is tell us not to do this, not to do that. What else can you even do? Auntie Lou has her own career, her own dreams and ambitions. She knows how to present herself and has been gentle and kind her whole life. How could you possibly compare to her? Suwon had emerged from the room at some point. He looked at his son with deep affection, and his son returned a warm, heartfelt smile. I suddenly feel like my memory is playing tricks on me. Suwon was hardly ever home before and barely spent any time with our son, so the boy used to ignore him completely. He'd just follow me around all day, calling out Mom. When did they get so close? My son took a deep breath, lowered his voice, and continued, Mom, I really admire Auntie Lou. She's so brave, always true to herself instead of spending her whole life revolving around other people. So, Mom, I want you to learn to love yourself too. Stop making your whole world revolve around us. He put it beautifully, and I understood exactly what he meant. What you're saying is, you want me and your father to get a divorce. Is that it? Yes, you've held Dad back for so many years already. Don't stand in the way of his happiness any longer. Am I holding him back? What about my happiness? Tears streamed down the corners of my eyes, and I felt the last bit of strength I had been holding on to drain away, leaving me a limp, lifeless heap. In the end, I managed to force those words out of my throat. Fine, let's get a divorce. With our son handling the arrangements, the divorce proceedings moved along much faster. The only point of contention arose during the division of assets. Suwon said, the house is mine. You can have 50,000 from our savings as compensation for all the housework you've done over the years. Even though Suwon didn't strive for promotions at work, and his son was used to spending extravagantly, the family still managed to save a total of 200,000 yuan. 2 superscript 1. I toiled all my life. In his eyes, it was worth only 50,000. I stood up, walked into the room, and took out the will my parents left me before they passed away. My parents bought this apartment for me. It's my premarital asset. We'll split the savings 50-50. Well, Su Miao. So you and your family have been guarding against me all these years. Suwon looked at me with a deeply hurt expression. Luckily, I was prepared for you, or my parents would have come up to see you tonight. As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt the tension in my chest release a bit. Maybe this is what my son meant by the benefits of loving yourself. Mom, why don't you give me the house? The son's eyes darted, and he leaned in. I shook my head and refused directly. The son frowned, looking at me impatiently, mumbling something under his breath. I knew he thought it would all be his eventually. So why bother? It's a bit funny to me now. I did think that way before, but I'm having second thoughts. If you don't agree, I'll just drag it out. After all, either party can withdraw the divorce application. I'm a much quicker learner than Suwon. I've come to understand a lot more about these things over the past few days, having found Suwon's weak spot. He promptly signed the document and submitted the application. During the 1-month cooling-off period, he left early and returned late every day, and his son was just as cheerful as his father, unhappy with how I handled the housing allocation. The two of them colluded and gave me the silent treatment for a whole month, acting as if I were thin air. My heart turned completely cold on the day they went to collect their divorce papers. Suwon brought Lu Yu along. The two of them eagerly walked arm in arm, looking for all the world like a long-married couple. Lu Yu wore a qipao, a living embodiment of the saying that true beauty is timeless. Time seemed to have treated her with particular kindness. Even the wrinkles on her face spoke of a serene and graceful acceptance of the years. Meow meow. I'm sorry, but what we have is real. We've already wasted most of our lives, and we don't have much time left to lose. Then where were you when you were young? Why didn't you tell him you loved him before he was transferred back to the city? I've always been restrained. Even when I knew about her past indiscretions with Suwon, I showed her leniency out of empathy for the struggles we women share, but that doesn't give her the right to hurt me over and over again. Lu Yu's tears fell instantly, and her son and Suwon hurried over to comfort her nervously. Her son also glared at me fiercely, as if this white moonlight were his real mother. Scenes that once caused great pain now seemed utterly meaningless to me. I quickly entered the hall, and within minutes, I emerged with a freshly issued divorce certificate. Suwon eagerly followed Lu Yu into the car, while their son stood by to see them off, reminding them of the things to watch out for. Yet as he passed by me, he didn't even spare me a glance. I called out his name one last time, but he kept his eyes fixed straight ahead and walked right past me. So be it, the bond between mother and son was too frail, let it end here at my age now. I took a taxi for the very first time, with just my phone and ID. I headed straight to the airport. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it really means to love oneself. After looking through countless answers, I found that living with no regrets was mentioned the most. I always wanted to go to Yunnan when I was young, but back then, transportation was inconvenient. By the time it improved, I had a child and was tied down by life's mundane tasks. Now it's time to love myself. Nothing can stop me from going to Yunnan now. Just before boarding, my phone started vibrating frantically with calls from my son. I guess he must have realized that all his things were thrown out and the locks at home were changed. I've already handed the house over to an agent for sale. From now on, I won't be coming back to this place. As for my son, he's already an adult, and he loves his dad so much that he completely disregards my feelings. I believe that in the future, having his dad will be enough for him. Upon landing in Yunnan, the rich floral fragrance enveloped me, making me fall in love with the city at first sight. Following the navigation, I arrived at the homestay I had booked in advance and found many elderly women basking in the sun in the courtyard. I blended in seamlessly. Life slowed down, and I lounged in my chair, lazily scrolling through my phone on WeChat. My son angrily demanded to know why I didn't consult him about selling the house, even threatening to cut ties with me. I responded to him in a young person's way, sending an okay gesture, and then blocked him. Luyu sent me a short video of their trip with Suwen. Suwen never stepped into the kitchen at home, not even when I was recovering from childbirth. Now, he's like a spinning top, moving swiftly around the induction cooker, skillfully preparing a full meal. After eating, he voluntarily cleaned up and took Luyu's hand. Luyu's message arrived on WeChat just in time. Thank you for teaching him so well. I was a bit angry but didn't know how to respond, when a sudden exclamation from beside me interrupted my thoughts. Hey, sis, this guy is really going too far. Stop talking. I saw it all. Let me help you. My name is Li Jing. She snatched my phone and started typing furiously on it. If you think it's good, pay me tuition. Where did you get that plastic bag? So full of yourself. Instead of surfing the web, go dry the water in your brain. After sending the message, she handed the phone back to me, looking quite pleased with herself. Is my husband cheating? This must be the other woman. She raised an eyebrow and stated with certainty. Perhaps being in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people made me feel uninhibited, so I just lay back and laid out the whole tangled story of my past with Su Wen and Luyu. Holding nothing back, Li Jing held a fan, tapping her forehead, and remained silent the entire time. It wasn't until she heard me say that Luyu wanted to go on a self-discovery road trip that she finally reacted. This shameless woman. She has to take someone else's husband to find herself. That's just low. The other sisters listening to the gossip nodded in agreement. But my son says that's just her loving herself. Nonsense. That's not loving herself at all. That's just pure shamelessness. Li Jing handed me her phone to watch a video. The woman inside was also on a self-driving trip. She is in her 50s. She endured half a lifetime of emotional abuse from her husband and sacrificed her life for her children and family. Finally, she decided to bravely fight back and pursue her own dreams. Now, she is living the life she wants. It's a bit similar between her and me, except that she actively resisted while I was forced to endure. Everyone has ideals and constraints, but when pursuing your own ideas, you shouldn't hurt others. That's the simplest principle. Not everything can be justified by the excuse of loving oneself. Li Jing patted my shoulder, and the pent-up breath in my heart finally released completely. From the start of this incident, everyone told me to be magnanimous and understanding, but no one admitted it was their fault. Finally, someone is standing by me. Thank you. Because of this, my relationship with Li Jing has improved dramatically. Although she is about the same age as me, she is very trendy. She knows everything young people do and even does it better. I accompanied her as we wandered through the streets and alleys of Yunnan, savoring all kinds of delicacies. One day, she suddenly asked me, "Want to become a food blogger?" What's a food blogger? It took her a while to explain, but I finally understood that a food blogger is someone who eats in front of the camera. My parents were truly a generation that endured hardships. From a young age, they taught me to cherish food and eat with a heart of gratitude. That's why I'm always happy when I eat, which makes my meals look especially delicious. Li Jing set up her phone in front of us. The copper pot rice noodles arrived, and the steam rising from them carried the spicy aroma of chives, the savory scent of pork, and the fragrant note of the rice noodles. Whetting our appetites, I picked up the rice noodles with my chopsticks and eagerly took a bite. While eating, he shared his happiness and satisfaction with Li Jing. We chatted and laughed through the meal, which lasted an hour, and finally, each of us bit into an ice pop as we walked back to the guest house. Lying in bed, Li Jing had been busy half the night, and the next morning, she excitedly slapped me on the back. "You've gone viral. The video we posted last night already has 100,000 likes, and many people have left comments for us. Auntie is so cute, she eats so deliciously, hee. Next time I'll bring my mom here too." The sudden fame left me a bit overwhelmed, but Li Jing handled everything perfectly. I went about my days as usual, eating and drinking normally, but my follower count gradually grew, and my savings slowly increased. Just as Li Jing and I were deciding what to eat the next day, I suddenly received a message from Liu. "Meow meow. I know that even after all these years, you still have feelings for old Su. Now that he's broken his leg, I'm sure you're worried. I'll be generous and let you take care of him." I held my phone, feeling like it had been ages since I last heard that name. Only when I opened the video did I realize how much thinner Suwin had become, lying in a hospital bed with one leg elevated. In the past, seeing him like this would have broken my heart. I would have cooked all sorts of nutritious dishes for him every day, delivering them to his side on time, but now, all I feel is that karma always comes full circle. Li Jing crossed her arms, snorted coldly, and stood by watching me. I picked up my phone and quickly replied, "Get lost. This is what they call online simple trash talk, ultimate enjoyment." Liu tried to say something more, but I blocked her. My son, out of the blue, called me using someone else's phone. "Mom, where are you?" After all, he is the son I've raised with so much effort over the years. Hearing his voice, my heart softened, and I wanted to ask where he's been staying lately, but the next second, his words shattered my illusion. "Dad broke his leg, go take care of him. He said he wants the pork rib soup you make." My heart began to ache with a dull, throbbing pain. "Have you forgotten? Your father and I are divorced." This was just a simple statement, but unexpectedly, my son suddenly erupted in anger. "Mom, why are you always so petty? Even if you're divorced, he's still my dad. What's the big deal about taking care of him? Isn't it your responsibility to take care of your dad? What does it have to do with me?" Without hesitation, I hung up the phone decisively. I just can't wrap my head around it. Suwin barely lifted a finger raising his son, yet the boy adores him so much. This has been gnawing at me, almost becoming a personal hang-up. But when Li Jing heard this, she just waved her hand dismissively and put an end to my confusion with a single sentence. "You know how bad genes get passed down, right, Su? One is a piece of work himself, so his offspring aren't going to be any prize either. That's just the power of genetics." I laughed out loud, feeling as if a great weight had been lifted from my heart. I believe I did my absolute best throughout my son's upbringing, yet, given this outcome, I can't help but wonder if I failed as a mother. But now I agree with Li Jing. Some people are just rotten to the core. Ignoring these trivial matters, Li Jing and I fully devoted ourselves to the food broadcasting career. Just as we were about to accept an interview, a negative trending topic about us suddenly appeared online. Shock. The true face of the internet celebrity food broadcaster Ant is disgusting. By the time Li Jing and I found out, the previously scheduled interviews and commercial deals had already been swiftly cancelled. Within a few hours, the expose had already made it to the top of the trending searches. The marketing accounts claimed that I could leisurely enjoy all kinds of delicacies in Yunnan because I not only abandoned my husband and child, forced my husband to divorce me, but also took all the family's assets, even selling the only house we had. As a result, my son now has no fixed abode and is wandering aimlessly. My happiness is built on the suffering of my family. Many people were cursing me, and some even called for my doxing. The others at the guest house also started looking at me strangely. I knew that it was crucial to clarify things in time, as this account was not just mine, but also Li Jing's hard work, so I actively sought evidence. Soon, I received another call from my son. "Mom, if you give me the house, I'll clear your name, so you know all this is fake, but you're just ignoring it, right?" After a long silence, my son didn't speak, but I faintly heard Luyu's voice. "Isn't it only natural for me to get the house? It hasn't been sold yet, so stop it right now." "Mom, what are you doing?" I hung up the phone, feeling that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Sure enough, after my account was compromised, many people started acting as free promoters in the comments. They began recommending another account called Yaya's Road Trip Logs. Upon checking, I found that the person inside was indeed Luyu. Li Jing studied it for a long while, then frowned. A big player must have entered the game. First, they tarnish our reputation, then, they ride that wave of controversy to drive traffic. If they play their cards right, Luyu's account could siphon off all our followers and land a massive amount of exposure. Sure, being independent means freedom, but it also leaves you wide open to being targeted by others. Seeing Li Jing's worried expression, I couldn't help but smile as I produced the evidence I'd gathered. This includes my police reports and videos I extracted from my home surveillance. They clearly capture the ugly faces of Su Wen and his son, as well as the hardships I've endured in this home for over 30 years. But this is not enough. I still want to visit Lu Yu's home. With her knack for causing trouble, the divorce certainly wasn't that simple. After a brief discussion with Li Jing, we boarded the return flight. We had promised never to return here, yet here we were again. Just a few months later, I took Li Jing to Lu Yu's place, asking for directions along the way, and gently knocked on the door. The door opened to reveal a young woman. "Hello, is this Lu Yu's home? Don't mention her to me. Get out." As soon as she finished speaking, the young woman slammed the door shut. We knocked on the door but got no response. After waiting for a long time, we finally saw the same young woman come downstairs, pushing an old man in a wheelchair. "Hello, let me explain first. I'm not a friend of Lu Yu's. I need your help with something." Li Jing quickly stopped them, and I quickly explained the situation. The young woman curled her lips in disdain. Isn't she the one who abandoned her husband and child? Does she really have no fear of retribution for saying such things? "Let's go to my place first." The woman wheeled the old man back home and had us take a seat. "Call me Xiao Xiao. That's my father. He's paralyzed on one side from a stroke." She lit a cigarette and began to tell us the truth about Lu Yu's marriage. After Su Wen arranged for her transfer back to the factory, the two of them began seeing each other on the sly. But back then, the party organization had strict rules to avoid jeopardizing Su Wen's and her own future prospects. And to placate me and stop me from making a scene, Lu Yu took action. Lu Yu quickly entered into an arranged marriage. Xiao Xiao's father was new to the factory and was later seconded to another plant. He never found out about any of this and treated Lu Yu devotedly for many years. He handed over his entire paycheck, took on all the household chores whenever he was home, and Lu Yu had more clothes and jewelry than anyone else in the whole factory. Yet, none of this was enough for Lu Yu. She always felt she was destined for a bigger stage. So when the story of the auntie on a road trip went viral online, it stirred something in her heart. She wanted to become an internet celebrity too. She drained all the remaining money from the family account to buy herself a car and equipment, splurged on expensive beauty treatments, and signed with a company. Just as Xiao Xiao's father was about to transfer the down payment for his daughter's house, he discovered that the account was completely empty. Overwhelmed with emotion, he suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. Lu Yu refused to pay for his surgery and took the opportunity to file for divorce. "She never really took care of me when I was little. All the other kids had their moms pick them up, but I was always the one walking home alone. When I grew up and confronted her about it, she said she wanted her freedom. She said that before being a mother or a wife, she had to be her own person first." Xiao Xiao's voice caught for a moment before she continued, "I don't understand. If she had no desire to fulfill the duties of a mother or a wife, she didn't have to get married or have me. Why say all this only after she'd already done those things?" Li Jing and I both froze in place. The concept of loving oneself is too difficult. How can one find the right balance in terms of staying true to herself? Lu Yu has almost reached perfection, yet it has unintentionally hurt so many people. When it comes to fulfilling my duties, I gave it my absolute all. But in the process, I ended up deeply hurting and wronging myself. I don't know, Xiao Xiao, that's a difficult question for me to answer. 2. The difference between Lu Yu and me is that I spent most of my life living up to my responsibilities, only to be deeply hurt by my husband and son in the end. It's only now that I'm learning how to love myself. With all the evidence prepared, I spent one night compiling and posting the whole story about Su Wen, his son, and me online. Those videos, which carried the weight of my blood, tears, and humiliation, were laid bare for all to see. It was like self-flagellation, watching the video of myself screaming and shouting. Su Wen's silence only made me look more like I was throwing an unreasonable tantrum. After watching it, I felt uneasy. I wondered if the netizens would also say, just like my son did, that my temper was terrible and that I only knew how to yell. To my surprise, the top-voted comment actually said this: "Auntie, seeing you feels like looking at my own mother. She endured a lifetime of emotional neglect and passed away with a broken heart. I understand your pain. A loved one's indifference is the cruelest weapon in the world." Many comments below were also supporting me. Li Jing took my hand, and together we scrolled through the responses. Public opinion has completely turned. Everyone is calling out my son and husband, saying raising a son like mine is more useless than raising a piece of roast pork. The resolve of contemporary netizens to remain unmarried and childless has increased by one more. My popularity has recovered. At the peak of the discussion, I posted the full story of Lu Yu's divorce. as well as her repeated provocations and slander against me. Online, I also initiated a discussion. What does it really mean to love yourself? How should we interpret the idea that before becoming a wife or a mother, we are first and foremost our own person? Lu Yu's scandal caused a huge uproar online, especially after her own daughter came forward with evidence that sealed her fate in the court of public opinion. Netizens also uncovered that the smear campaign against me was orchestrated by the company behind Lu Yu. Overnight, Lu Yu became public enemy number one, bombarded with reports from users until her account was ultimately suspended. Xiao came to see me one last time. Her father had passed away. She sold the house and planned to leave this place. Auntie, I feel so exhausted. I used to love her, and I hated her too. Now it's all over. I feel neither love nor hate. From now on, we'll just be strangers. As for the issue you mentioned last time, I don't know either, but at the very least, I can guarantee that I won't get married or have children until I understand these things. Before finding the right answer, all I can do is avoid starting the test. The discussions online are still ongoing, with many opinions. Quite a few people believe that self-worth is above all else. Why don't people have the same expectations for fathers? They live just as freely before and after marriage, while only the mother is trapped within the family. However, many people believe that others' failure in marriage is not an excuse for one to shirk their own responsibilities. Moreover, once entering marriage, one's identity changes, and personal values almost inevitably have to yield to family responsibilities, something every married person should consider. The online debate has exploded, and I am even more confused. Unsure of what the answer to the problem really is. However, I saw Su Wen, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He looked much older and no longer had that refined and dashing demeanor he once had. Lu Yu had lost that serene, contented look. Her once calm and detached demeanor seemed to have vanished without a trace. Right now, she was screaming herself hoarse at Su Wen, who, as usual, kept his lips pressed tightly together without saying a word. I couldn't help but steal a few more glances at them. To my surprise, Su Wen, sharp-eyed, spotted me and immediately walked over. He rubbed his hands together somewhat awkwardly. "You're back," he said. "You've changed quite a bit." I glanced at my outfit. With the help of skincare products and beautiful clothes, I did look much prettier, but most importantly, I no longer had to endure their mistreatment. "Su Wen, what do you mean by this? You called her illiterate before, and now you're eagerly trying to get close to her. Aren't you being shameless?" Lu Yu's hoarse shout drew a lot of attention. As all three of us were internet celebrities, we were soon being pointed at and whispered about. Su Wen couldn't stand being scrutinized like that and pushed Lu Yu away. "That's enough. Aren't you embarrassed enough? Let me tell you, it's all because of you that I've ended up like this. Get out of here, and don't ever see me again." I watched as Lu Yu sobbed uncontrollably, then left after shouting "Get out." Su Wen, with a shameless grin, came up to me and babbled on about his road trip. I just found out that he took care of all the odd jobs, while Lu Yu only had to look good and shoot videos. He broke his leg because he slipped and fell in the bathroom while filling up the car with water, and Lu Yu not only didn't take care of him, but also resented him for holding up her plans. Meow meow. I only realized now that you're the one who's always been the best to me. My leg has been hurting these past 2 days. Can you come back and take care of me? I raised an eyebrow and called my son. "Your dad is sick. Come pick him up." My son did come, but his face clearly showed displeasure as he looked at his limping father, muttering something all the way. Sitting down, "All right, Mom, you've had your fun for half a year. Now that you've vented your anger, come back and take care of Dad." "Why, you were the one who supported Dad finding true love, and told me to love myself and find my own path, so why are you backtracking now?" My son was speechless for a moment, then finally blurted out in a gruff voice, "You're not exactly young anymore. What do you think you're going to find? Your place is at home, taking care of Dad and keeping the house in order. Honestly, I think you've lost your mind." Looking at him, I couldn't help but feel a little amused. "You only backed your father because his connections could advance your career. Now that he's a disgraced liability, you're terrified he'll drag you down, so you couldn't wait to dump this burden on me. You've inherited your father's selfish genes to a T, not a single deviation." My words drained the color from my son's face, leaving him speechless and rooted to the spot. I put on my sunglasses and issued the ultimatum. "Su Wen, divorcing you was the best decision I've ever made in my life." Li Jing and I didn't go back to Yunnan. Instead, we embarked on a nationwide food tour. Every day brought us to a new destination. I loved the surprise element. Like opening a mystery box, of course, sometimes we'd run into disappointing food, and our gourmet tasting session would instantly turn into a roast session. Su Wen kept trying to reach me, and I kept finding new ways to block him. The last I heard of him was from a news report on a local incident. One late night, Luyu lured Suwon out, pushed him into the lake, and then jumped in after him. I knew Luyu had been having a hard time since she returned home, especially after the cause of her husband's death was made public. Her husband's family came to resent Luyu, harassing her constantly until she could barely afford to eat, fearing he'd get burned. Suwon never helped her like he used to again. In the end, Luyu completely snapped, blaming Suwon for everything. She killed him with her own hands. Their obsessive, decades-long love story actually ended like this. How utterly satisfying. Li Jing held her phone, looking at me with some hesitation. About your son, what about him? I heard he got fired and is having a really rough time. Maybe you should give him a little help. To be honest, even if Li Jing hadn't said anything, I knew he wasn't doing well. Not only did he lose his job, but he also got hooked on gambling. The money his father left him was all gambled away, but he still believed he had a chance to turn things around, so he borrowed from loan sharks. Now the interest has compounded to 300,000. That day, my son was caught and threatened me, saying he would break his leg if I didn't pay off his debt. I ignored it. In the end, I saw a photo of my son lying on the ground, his lower body a bloody mess. The neighbors say my son can only move his upper body now. He's homeless, sleeping under bridges and begging for money, but he brought this fate upon himself. He's an adult. He has to take responsibility for his own actions. I can't protect him forever. Don't worry about it. Everyone has their own destiny. Let it be. Li Jing sighed in relief and continued to take me to find a hot pot restaurant. I struggled for a long time with the proposition of loving myself, but now, I understand that loving yourself is about telling yourself that you need to fulfill your responsibilities, but you must not lose yourself. Just as I have given birth to a son, I will take full responsibility for his growth, ensuring his food, clothing, shelter, and well-being, and caring for his mental health. However, this does not mean I will endlessly give and tolerate, allowing him to trap me in the role of mother, where he can hurt me at will. Yet, any proposition in life is far too complex. Perhaps at the next crossroads, I will have new insights and thoughts. Give yourself time and grace.